Hey, everyone, welcome to episode 84 of Going Live with Good Soil. I see here in the YouTube title, we still have Yashu Sharma listed in the in the
We're
episode. So
basically the same person. We have the
yeah,
same
it's
complexity. We're
you
fine. Yeah.
interchangeable. You're both easy to talk to and guys that I like talking to. So
Yeah.
this works out just fine. How you doing, Farzad?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Canada's really nice today. I'm out here in Vancouver. I'm kidding. No, it's great, man. I'm happy to join you guys again on Good Soil. I remember being here a while ago. You guys treated me extremely well. I love your channel. I try to catch your stuff as much as humanly possible. I think you and Emmett bring extremely good insights, and I'm just honored to be part of this conversation. So thank you so much for inviting me. See how nice I can be to you? You see this? This is weird.
Yeah, people who watch this YouTube on record are going to miss the tremendous insult I hurled right before we got started. But
That's why I'm in
uh,
such a good mood.
no, it's always good to talk to you. We
Likewise.
generally like to start this off with macro, and obviously the inflation has been the boogeyman for the last year and a half. Just last week, we got kind of a continuation of some not so great news with PPI figures being a little bit higher than expected. I know macro's not your extreme focus on the channel, but it's something that's impacting everyone. So, I mean, what's your thought right now on kind of where we are? Like, do you think that we're past inflation? Do you just not care? What's your kind of view on that right now?
Yeah, it's been interesting for me because it's something I've been trying to track anecdotally locally where I live. So I'm in the Austin area, and with these things. What I try to do is I try to talk to everyday people around me to see what's going on. Again, my local area might differ from the broader macro trends, obviously, because it is called macro. But I try to see and feel what's going on around me. The two things that are interesting that I'm tracking right now as far as inflation goes and how consumer pricing is sort of affecting things. I'm noticing trends around the used car market. Pricing is going back up again, which is an interesting thing to track. I have a good friend of mine that lives locally that works for one of the major home builders in the United States, and he's saying that some of the housing demand is starting to pick back up again, and they're selling homes again. So these are things that I'm seeing that are going to somewhat impact pricing a little bit, at least in the near term. Obviously, we don't even have to talk about eggs, right? Eggs are like $1 million a pound or whatever the pricing is right now for those things.
You buy
But
your eggs by the pound? Is that how
I
they do it in Canada?
yes, I buy them by the pound. Costco, shout out. But I do think what's interesting, the verbiage that the Fed has given versus some of the near trend stuff that's been happening has been interesting to track, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this because for the first time, I think Jerome Powell was very much telling us that disinflation, so the reduction of inflation, the rate of inflation going up year over year is coming down, and this is the first time that there's now basically confirmation that this is happening in the same time period that we're seeing a spike, sort of a spike near term in
Mhm.
January. Now I'm like, wow. So the fact that you came out so confidently saying this, and I'm assuming they had this data close by or aware of it when they were making these comments that there would be this near term sort of spike in inflation, tells me that perhaps this could be something that's not sticky, that we might see a little spike in January and it's going to normalize through the end of the year, and we'll continue to see inflation coming down, hopefully towards closer to 3 or 2% by the end of the year. Who knows what the likelihood is nowadays? But I don't know. It's just we're in this weird flux of is it happening? Is it not happening? Is it going to be transitory? Is it not going to be transitory? So, what are your thoughts? How are you thinking about this?
Yeah, I keep going back and forth. I mean, I was certainly a year and a half ago in the kind of soft landing camp. That was wrong, very, very clearly. But as more and more data came, it does. I still do believe that it was a lot of this was kind of related to supply shocks, and things that
Yeah.
are kind of outside the Fed's control. I mean, the whole like shipping container thing and the war in Ukraine and what that's done to energy prices, and then just how long those things take to ripple through the economy. I think those are like legitimate kind of short-lived issue, maybe not short-lived, but like medium-lived issues that are, going to take some time to flow through. And then on top of that, you've got housing, which makes up almost 40% of PPI or CPI. And that is such a lagging indicator with the way that the Fed calculates that with this owner's equivalent rent thing. So you like that's a pretty significant contributor going forward. But if you look at what's going on in commodity prices, I mean, those spikes really preceded the inflation that we're seeing, and now they've really come crashing back down. Natural gas is a big one that I look at because it's such a huge input for electricity costs, but also for like a ton of other kind of industrial processes and heating your home and all sorts of things. So that's back down to like I think it was 280 an MMBTU right now, which is pretty much exactly where it was in 17, 18, 19 before all this stuff happened. So to me, that's a very good sign. It'll take a while, I think, for that to make its way through the economy. But I think 6 months ago, there were a lot of people just thinking, oh, war in Ukraine, there's going to be this big natural gas shortage. Europe's going to have an energy crisis, and that's going to lead to sustained high prices in the US. And so, we're not seeing that. And so, yeah, I do have some hope that I'm sure there's going to be some ups and downs and some bumps, but I really do think that inflation is not going to be, kind of persistent, and we're going to need, 6% Fed funds rate or anything like that.
Yeah. If I contrast that, so thank you for making those points, because it's like the one big thing we're hearing, like you said, energy is going to take a huge hit because of the war, and here we are, end of February going into March. Hopefully, it looks like the winter hasn't been nearly as cold as they would have expected in that, especially in Europe, in those regions. Some of the stuff that I read anyway could be wrong, who knows, but if you're from Europe, let us know if that's correct. But so that's been good to see. But then the contrast on the flip side, and this is again anecdotal, and there's some data points to this. Folks are out spending. I'm seeing people out. I don't know if you're seeing this in your region, but people are shopping, people are going on vacation, people are traveling. If I look at some of the data sets that Unusual Whales usually posts on his Twitter, great account on Twitter, by the way, if you don't follow that account, Unusual Whales, phenomenal. Just really good data points that you get from macro and other things as well, different industries. The rate of debt is basically skyrocketed. People are spending a lot of money. They're not saving nearly as much. And so all these different things are like, okay, there's a lot of pricing. There's a lot of demand for things. There's a lot of people out there spending a lot of money. And then you put this within the context of record low unemployment at 3.4%. And I remember way back when we had our first conversation, I think one of the things we were talking about is what if this whole thing ends up being long-term where just humans are going to human and they're just going to carry the economy forward. Screw what's going to happen. People are just going to spend anyway because screw it. We've been cooped up for a year and a half. And I wonder how much of that psychology is playing out today, where even if there was fear of a recession or even if there was fear of inflation sort of putting stuff out of whack, people are just going to behave like people want to behave. And if people want to spend and have a good time and be like, okay, we'll figure it out as we go along, maybe that's what we're seeing now. And that's why the stats are the way they are, because it is super confusing. It is, at least I'm confused by it, but I'm also a moron. So I'm confused by a lot of things.
So that's the girls just want to have fun theory of inflation.
That's right.
Like, yes. Things are weak, but we're just going to go out and have a good time anyway.
Girls just want to have fun theory. Yeah, you should trademark that.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. I mean, one of the things that has caused me a little bit of concern is this seems a little bit unsustainable. That you do have, like, the economy looks pretty strong because employment looks good. If they can get inflation in check and the GDP continues to grow like it has, then like that's the Goldilocks scenario, right? That's the soft landing that everyone wants. But if this kind of positive GDP growth and consumer spending is fueled by debt, which right now it definitely is, then it suggests that something is unsustainable. So can we go 5 more years like that or something and have another boom cycle? I think that's certainly possible. But I think at some point something needs to normalize out in this equation, and it's not clear to me exactly what will break or when. But it's interesting. And yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say the one thing to keep a track of, and this I'm looking at this very closely, that the car industry might be an interesting one to track in 2023 as a whole in the States, because a lot of these automakers are projecting growth in the auto industry. I think from 13.9 to about 15.4, which is an 8% year over year. So 15.4 million units sold in the US in 2023, which is an 8.4% increase. But if I'm looking at some of the data sets that are coming through, we're at record high car payments. I think the average car payment in the United States is up to $770 per month. The
That's
average
crazy.
new car is insane. The average new car price is $50,000. So, like you said, at some point, something's got to break. Like, is this a sustainable thing long term? And if you look at pre-COVID levels, I think the average new car price was something like $390, and that's doubled.
The
In the
payment, you
span
mean,
of
you
3 years.
said,
A payment. Sorry, excuse
yeah,
me.
not
Yeah,
not
you're right.
$390 cars would be, that's
Yeah,
something
amazing.
to shoot for.
Sign me up, Tesla. Come on, get on it.
So what a
But
payment, yeah, like that seems like a reasonable car payment right now,
yeah,
but uh, that's just insane how high it's gotten. And then if you couple that with you've done some great work on looking at inventory levels with GM in particular. What do they have now? 3 months of inventory on hand, like an entire
more.
quarter's production,
Oh yeah, close to
more than that.
close to yeah, it depends on the brand. I think GM, Chevy was at like 68 days, 67 days. Buick is like at 120 days. It's Cadillac's at 90 days. So it depends. The different GM brands have different levels, but they're above what's considered healthy, which is 60 days supply. Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems strange to me, just drilling into that a little bit further too, that, I know one of the trends recently has been that used car prices are rising, which people weren't really expecting in this market. So like that also seems unsustainable to me when you've got this much new inventory and still somehow used car prices are rising. So yeah, it seems like there's all sorts of kind of mixed signals out there. And as investors trying to figure out what's going to happen in the market, or at least kind of how to position yourself, it's a tricky situation. And we've seen a nice rally so far year to date, but obviously down pretty significantly today. Do you have a thought, or do you even look at the near term, or you just kind of hold and Tesla's going to be great in the long term, so that's all that matters?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I do track. I try not to look at the stock market every day. Like yesterday, for example, I didn't even know it was closed. I'm like halfway through my stream yesterday with Alex. Like when I started my stream with Alexandra, I was like, oh, I think the market is closed today. So I try not to look at the stock market every day. It is interesting to watch sort of how the price, if you look at right around when Elon closed his deal on Twitter and versus where we are now, you had this like V-shaped recovery. It was like boop boop, like folks, oh my God, it's going to 30 because it's an automaker. Now it's like, oh my God, we're back to 200. Let's go to all-time highs. It's
Yeah.
like sort of the psychology is fascinating. And, I'm on Twitter, obviously, like saying what I say usually. And it's like, I'm not helping matters. I'm just kind of speaking my mind a little bit. But I think what's interesting is now we live in a world where I think folks that are investing in maybe looking at Tesla short term. I think there's a lot of focus around China, obviously, for the
Mhm.
quarter, because
Yeah.
if you look at the weekly numbers that came out today, there's softness in the domestic registrations. However, we don't have great insight into how much of that is being exported, so the net number of units sold out of that facility might still be just fine. We did get reports that the company, the Shanghai factory, was basically got everybody back to be back at the same production levels as they were before the recent shutdown because of COVID and the new year. So that assumes around 1 million units out of that facility, or close to 1 million units shipped out of that facility per year. So it's going to be fascinating to track that. But I do very much focus 2, 3, 5 years out at the very least, especially within the context of Investor Day coming up here in a week, and the potential unveiling of the compact car, or the platform for that robotaxi compact car thing. You also got Cybertruck coming out, version 11.3 starting to hit the streets. So these are the things I look for long term. And one of the things that's fascinating to me to track is, I think there's a subset of folks that are looking at Tesla or investing in Tesla, are looking at the stock price, and they are coming up with an investing thesis around the stock price, where I think making sure that we do it the opposite way, where we look at the fundamentals of the company and try to see where they could be in 5 to 10 years' time, is a much better way of gauging where we are versus where we could be. Not financial advice, obviously, but that's how I always try to keep that sort of frame of reference, so that if we do have a 50% drop in the stock price, my psychology is not impacted nearly as much, hopefully. But I'm human, and I have faults just like everybody else. How do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe a little bit different for for Emmett and I in managing a fund, where day to day, week to week, month to month, our performance is available, and frankly, we're always kind of looking for opportunities. Like, are we positioned right now, given the prices of all the different stuff that we're invested in? So I certainly feel the kind of emotional ups and downs with it, because I am checking every day, and like as first thing I got up yesterday morning, I'm like looking up the European price and
Oh
tweeting
God,
that out. So
that's
yeah,
healthy.
I probably wish was like in a more healthy spot than you, but I feel like with what we're doing at Good Soil, that it's kind of my responsibility to take that stress level for our
Thank you
investors
for
so they get
destroying your mental for our well-being. Thank you very much.
yeah, no, it's so it is something that I do feel that I need to take a look at, but I think over the last couple of years, the extreme swings up and down that we've seen has conditioned me at least a little bit to realize that, all right, I'm not going to be happy when the stock price goes up, and it's not going to like be soul crushing when the price goes down, because at the end of the day, this is something that I care about a lot. But if you tie your personal worth as a human being to how many zeros are in your bank account, that's going to be a very sad existence. So
Yeah.
I do think I've at least got that bit of perspective on it, but yeah, it doesn't make the swings that much that much easier, I would say.
For sure.
Um,
It was challenging. I mean, it was a very challenging time period for the last 6 months, call it that. I mean, all of us that invested in Tesla, boy, and I know you've covered this on your channel, but man, it was strange to say the least, because I think that was new for a lot of us. That's sort of insanity, and there was a for those that were in the stock for a long time, say since IPO, there were some similar things that may have conditioned those folks to do that. But the recent stuff with all the different variables, how big Elon is in the media, one of the most, I think, famous people in the world, one of the, he's basically a celebrity now. And then you got the Twitter stuff in there. It was very strange to navigate through, and separating noise from signal was extremely difficult. But the lessons learned, I think, from that time period are going to be invaluable for the future. I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry.
yeah. No, it's an interesting point, maybe worth another little detour. I mean, one of the things I've been thinking about a little bit is, the stock has basically doubled from the lows where it was just over a month ago. And at that time, there were a lot of criticisms. Emmett and myself were even talking about like maybe taking Kimball off the board, replacing him with somebody who's just doesn't have the appearance of being like be beholden to Elon, and some of the stuff around like why not try advertising a little bit. These are things that we got some flack for, because people are like, oh, the stock price is down and you guys are just like crapping all over Elon. But I still think those are actually like reasonable ideas now that the stock has recovered. So I think when the price was down, it did, I think, give legitimate fuel to some of these concerns around PR and that sort of thing. And now that it's recovered, I haven't seen as much commentary on that, aside from like Ross Gerber, which is like a whole separate thing. People have very strong opinions on his his stance there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I still think that those points that we brought up, a month ago and 2 months ago, while things were really beat up and it looked like Elon was making some fumbles, I still think that there are some legitimate points around advertising and PR and that sort of thing that I would like to see Tesla at least poke at and say, okay, we tried it and it either worked or it didn't, and we learned something. So, but I mean, what's your thought? I know you've been happy to give controversial opinions from time to time.
Yes, for sure. I think so. So the more I think about it, and I put within context where Tesla's going in the next 2 to 3 years as they release the Cybertruck and the compact car platform, and they start really building towards 20 million units per year by 2030. So we have to make sure that's always been the goal since really the beginning of the decade. 20 million car run rate, I'm going to guess. So exiting December 31st, 2030 at 20 million cars per year. There's going to have to be some sort of ramp, right? So there has to be an introduction of the Cybertruck. There's also going to have to be the introduction of, much more importantly, the compact car, the van, and whatever other segments they have. The more I think about this, and this is why I believe there's still a lot of reluctance to spend any time around marketing or PR or anything, because I really do believe Tesla is banking on the fact that once these two things are hitting the roads, given that the current demand of the vehicles remains as high as it is, especially after the price drop, and we have a lot of data points that confirm this, especially in the especially in the United States. I think they're saying, well, we're not going to care about that because once Cybertruck's hitting the roads and the compact car is announced and people can buy this car for $25,000, $30,000, and I've done some math today too that just really drives home the point. We're not going to need to do anything because people are just going to buy these things in droves. We're going to go back to the whole thing that we were back in 2015, 2016, 2017, even that we are now, that literally we just can't make enough cars. And for every Cybertruck that's on the road, we're going to be able to sell 4 more Teslas. For every compact car that's in the road, we're going to be able to sell 10 more Teslas. And that's the mentality. And the more I put it through that lens, it kind of makes sense. It kind of makes sense as long as you don't do anything so egregious up to that point that it somehow derails that capability within the context of the. And then we also have to put it within the framing that says, if it's true that the majority of people who are looking to buy a car aren't really that concerned about some of the things that Tesla's doing that we're hyper focused on, and they're really just worried about best bang for your buck, access to charging, good driving dynamics, really good infotainment, comfortable, stylish. As long as these are really the primary driving factors, everything else is kind of noise. And I think that's how Tesla's thinking about it. And I'm much more warming up to that the more I think about Cybertruck and compact car. However, I think things like Investor Day are important. And I'm glad that they did something like that to sort of, I think that was in direct response to all the noise that was happening in the last few months. So I applaud Tesla for that. Their Twitter accounts have become a lot more active.
They really have. That's been great to see. And
fantastic.
I'm still cracking up about that robot love video for Valentine's Day. That was just
it was really good.
Like, who else does that? That's just that really. I just love that they still do quirky things like that.
Yeah. So I think we're already seeing change. I think we're already seeing change in so how Tesla approaches it and how Elon approaches it. Elon's sort of Twitter, let's call it his Twitter persona, has calmed down a little bit. It's a lot less controversial. He's still highlighting things that could be controversial, but he's not like just drilling his opinion through people's eyes, which he has every right to do. But again, let's think about what that does to his image.
Not so diplomatic necessarily.
Exactly. So it's changed. So I'm already seeing a lot of change. And so the way I think about this, like, okay, so that's probably all we can expect from Tesla at this point is these sort of changes to stay. And then just focus on Cybertruck, focus on compact car, focus on getting those batteries ramped, and focusing on Master Plan Part 3 and getting that thing to fruition. Long-winded answer, but there's just so much to it, right? Well, how do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I generally agree with all of that. Where I might differ is just kind of on the margin. So I certainly agree that Cybertruck and some of these other form factors that they come out with will lead to an increased demand, and I'd certainly believe in the long term they'll be demand constrained, but that kind of does presume that you lower price. So demand is unlimited, but not at any price, right? So that's the thing to keep in mind. So when I'm thinking about this, and when Emmett is, and I know Yashu's been talking about this a little bit, is you can get all the demand you need by lowering your ASP by $5,000. But if you do the math on 2 million units, that's $10 billion of cost to kind of fill out your demand. So all I'm wondering is, if you spent 100 million, let's say, on like a really great advertising campaign, like what would that do to your demand compared to the 10 billion that you're essentially spending on price cuts? So, long term, just to make these affordable, you do have to lower prices anyway. So like that's always been in our kind of model. But, I just in the intermediate term, it seems like there's maybe a way that could potentially be more beneficial to margins while still kind of filling out supply. So that's maybe the only thing I think it's slightly different than what you said. But in the long term, I agree.
Yeah, I can see that point for sure, but I can see it. I think within how Tesla has given their track record of how they think about this is not really aligned per se with their core mission, which is that advancement, right? of sustainable transport through making it as affordable as humanly possible. So I think the math becomes, well, yes, we could use $100 million to drive $2 billion in revenue, but I would rather use the $100 million in costs or R&D or whatever wherever bucket you want to put that 100 million in, and instead figure out how to get the compact car to be $2,000 cheaper so that people in South America, Africa, Asia, and the rest of the world can afford this thing, because that's ultimately our goal. And I don't think that goal is completed until they hit that 20 million per unit number. And so I do not expect any PR, like any traditional PR, any traditional comms, any traditional marketing and advertising from Tesla until they finalize their fleet. They say, here are our models. We've basically reached, we finalized the S-curve for vehicles, and then we're going to start investing into, okay, this is how we're going to do it. That's the way I think about it.
Yeah, no, and I think that's right. And I think we're going to learn a lot in just over a week now. Geez,
I know.
At this Investor Day, Gen 3 platform. I mean, there is so much I'm really looking forward to. What do you think that there's going to be any kind of secret surprise, or what are your expectations in general for this Investor Day event?
I'm trying again. I always fail at this for every single event. I'm trying to keep my expectations low, and then 24 hours before the event, I'm making the dumbest predictions of all time, because that's just who I am. I'm
And
an
I am jotting
emotional.
them down to
Yes,
shove in your
hold me
face
accountable.
later.
Yeah,
Don't
that's
listen
how
to
I
this
am.
guy. He's a paid
Yeah,
Elon shill.
it's true. Yeah, sure, whatever. I'm not, by the way, FYI. I'm not, but I do think I think there will be a Gen 3 platform. Um, I think there will be a Gen 3 platform shown, but it won't be the actual compact car. I think what they'll do is they'll show the battery, they'll show the drivetrain, they'll show maybe some processes around how to build that thing. But I don't think they're going to show the actual car, because if you really think about what are the implications of doing that, of really unveiling that car, you're going to have, unless you're able to release it in 6 months or 12 months, you're going to have a backlog
Yeah.
that's going to be 5 million deep at least.
Yeah.
And at that pricing level, I don't think you want to get into a situation where you want to incentivize people to wait in line to get their cars.
Yeah.
So I think we'll get an idea as far as what Tesla's planning for, like, manufacturing this, how they want to manufacture the car, and what are maybe the modular components they're going to use in the platform to maybe build it up to a van or whatever else. But I don't think we see the actual car. So that's one thing. I do think we get a lot of insight into Master Plan Part 3. Obviously, Elon Musk talked about how he's going to talk about it. So how do we get more batteries? How do we get more raw materials? I still expect them to get into some sort of mining. I really do think so, because those raw, based on the verbiage that they used very recently, it doesn't seem like anyone's really stepping up to the plate as fast as they want them to. And Elon has said, if we have to get into it, we will. We don't want to, but if we have to, we will.
And there
so
was just this rumor last week of Sigma Lithium that Tesla was in the early stages, at least, of looking at them for an acquisition. Somebody commented that they should acquire them and just rename them Ligma Lithium, which I think is a great idea.
Sure.
It's like I could see Elon doing it just for the fact of that. It's like, well, we had to pay an extra
so.
billion, but I really wanted to buy Ligma.
Yeah.
But no, I agree with you. It wouldn't surprise me if they do something on the mining side. I mean, I think they need to. I mean, that's one of the most obvious unanswered questions. I think they're good through 2025 with the agreements that they have, but to really scale, like there's not a clear plan right now of how to get enough lithium to get to 20 million units. So I would absolutely love answers around that.
Yeah.
Do you think what about Highland, and there's this rumor of the I don't know if it's necessarily a rumor, but the Shanghai plant was shut down for the Model 3 upgrades. We've seen some images of Model 3s that have the front and the back covered up a little bit. You have any thoughts on might we see like a Project Highland kind of unveiling or update, and do you think that might be in production already?
Go ahead.
I think it's too early for production, but I'm kind of wondering what's going on in Shanghai.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm not so sure. I have seen, and somebody confirmed this for me in the comments if I'm wrong. I thought there was a picture on Twitter of a Model X that had headlights with cameras on them. like on either side, like on the outside, on the top right corner and top left corner of the headlights. It has some sort of cameras. So it looks like hardware 4 is already rolled out. There was that sort of breakdown of the
Yeah.
computer that you were going back and forth with Dalma, James Dalma.
Hmm.
Um, so so I think hardware 4 and Highland go side by side because I don't think they refresh the Model 3 unless they do want to add Highland to it. Or they don't do Highland unless they add the next generation
Yeah.
computer and cameras and all that good stuff. I thought there was a rumor though that Highland wouldn't be ready until September, but I guess that's not right.
Yeah, no, I've heard that too, but it seems strange to me to do like upgrades to the Model 3 line in Shanghai right now if you've got that coming in September, and like the tooling wouldn't be comparable, I don't think. So, I don't know. Maybe it's just unrelated, improvements,
To me, it's
but
just a refresh. I mean, it's just a simple refresh. This Highland thing, I've seen content around it that's been great about how this could be like this transformational thing, and I think there will be things that will be borrowed from the process for the compact car eventually. But I do think it's just a refresh to modernize the Model 3 a little bit. We have to remember this platform is still based on Tesla's first generation mass market platform, the Model 3 back in
mhm.
2016, which Sandy Monroe called a hot piece of beep. Okay. So, like, the way that car is built ain't that great,
Yeah.
although it's a great car, but it's first generation. So, I think it's modernizing that, getting it up to speed, remove maybe a couple grand of cost out of this, out of cogs, and get so, and make it so that there's better differentiation between Model 3 and Model Y. Although Tesla's really reaching that right now, there is about a 10,000 price difference between the base Model 3 and the base Model Y, or the base Model Y that's on the configurator right now. So that's good. But I think creating further separation is important to ensure that the Model 3 has as much demand as humanly possible. So we might see that refresh. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. That was a severe. Where's my bless you, bro? Come
I,
on.
I felt
You have
I
all those
felt that
things
over here.
behind you.
I'm scared. Yeah, you almost knocked him over.
You scared to bless me.
Bless you,
But
Farzad.
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. But I do think who knows? We'll see. We'll see. I think that's a smaller deal. The
Yeah.
Highland thing, I just getting the car to be more modern versus what's being offered today.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's a fair point, but the cost structure is it's just too high right now. I mean, one of the comments that stuck out to me, I forget when Elon said this, but sometime around the Model 3 ramp in Shanghai, he was saying that the Model Y was going to be about the same or potentially even a little bit cheaper than than the Model 3, which is just crazy when you think about how much bigger the Model Y is.
Yeah.
So it also seems crazy not to at least roll out some of those learnings into the older Model 3. So I agree.
Yeah.
It's probably not the biggest thing. Like hardware 4, I think is much more exciting. Version 11, much more exciting. Gen 3, much more exciting. But I really just can't wait. I think this is going to be a really big day for nerds that like us. That's going to be widely misinterpreted in the mainstream media. But
Yeah, I agree.
definitely
I
looking
agree
forward to it.
100% with that. And what's interesting is there was a did they display the itinerary? Do we know like when Investor Day is starting? Like what
So
time
I
and stuff?
saw somebody agenda that I saw. I think it's like check-ins at 11, and then there's like factory tours at like 2:45 or
I
something like
saw that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember all the times offhand, but
I
it's
think
long. It's a
the
long event.
event it is. I think the event is supposed to start at 3, like the live stream event is
The
supposed to start
keynotes,
at
yeah,
3, the keynotes, and then it's gonna go through 5:30 for the Q&A. So it's 2.5 hours of talking about the future of Tesla. And at least an hour and a half of it is specifically to a keynote. The different speakers that are going to come on board and really talk about the expansion plans and stuff. So there's gotta be some new information we're going to get. The biggest thing is around product unveils, product like that Gen 3 platform. If they're really talking about Gen 3 platform in the invitation, we're boy, if they don't tell us something like, hey,
yeah,
we plan on like release this thing around this date. Maybe don't give us any costs, but this is how we're thinking about the rollout. These are the regions that are going to get it. This is how we're planning the battery supply chain should get to that point. It's just I don't know how you do that without giving up some breadcrumbs that are going to be fundamental in building out the Tesla thesis for the next 3 to 5 years. It's just, and if
yeah.
you don't do that, then you shouldn't have put that verbiage in the invitation. You
Yeah.
know?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I think they will. I mean, Battery Day might be a good analogy where they laid out, their very direct plan of how they were going to reduce, capex per unit of capacity, how they were going to, reduce the cell cost and increase the yield, and like it just like reducing the overall footprint of the factories as well. But it was like that really important financial data was like sandwiched between like a ton of like super technical like anode cathode stuff that was like putting all the Wall Street guys to sleep. And it's like
Yeah.
there was like 10 minutes in there for them, and the rest of it was recruiting and like
Super
just like
nerd.
super technical nerd stuff that I love. But so it wouldn't surprise me if there's something like this. But the fact that it's an investor day and not like a battery day or one of the ones that you
Exactly.
think of as like traditionally like a technical kind of recruiting event, that has me a little optimistic that they're gonna be more kind of direct in the business opportunity here.
I couldn't agree. Yeah, that's a phenomenal point, because you think about what are the last 2 or 3 events that Tesla has done. They've done AI Day 2, they did Battery Day, they did one other day, right? I forget what it was. Oh, maybe I'm confusing it for Neuralink. But the last two that I can remember that were heavily technical were AI Day 2 and Battery Day. And these two were like to your point, super technical. And the only other sort of days we've had that were
Optimus too. Optimus was
Optimus.
incredibly, yeah.
That's right. Yeah. It wasn't that
Or was
AI Day
was that
too?
AI Day too?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was AI
sorry.
Day too. Come on, bro, get it right. And AI Day, the original AI Day as well. So those are the three: Battery Day, AI Day, and AI Day 2. We're all incredibly technical. You and I, with our eyes glazed over, trying to absorb stuff, and we can't. So we have to get James Dama on our channels to help us understand what the hell happened, right?
And we
So
still
this is
don't understand it.
and we still don't understand.
I did like a 3-hour live stream with him where he was like dumbing it down for us, and I was still like, I don't feel like I really got it.
Which tells you
Super
just how
genius.
crazy Tesla is with their approach. They're like, "Hey, here you
Yeah.
go," and James is like, "Yes, please." He's so talented. That guy, it's amazing.
Yeah,
Thank
he
you, James,
is.
for everything you do. But this will be the first planned event since really Cybertruck was unveiled, if you really think about it, that is not geared to the technical aspect of Tesla,
Mhm.
outside of the quarterly earnings reports, which they have to do anyway because
Yeah.
they're required by law. That's fun. It's almost 3 years since the last time. Actually, it's been 3 years. Yeah, it's been over 3 years since Tesla had a non-technical event where all of us could sit down and watch, outside of their investor, like their annual shareholder meetings. And by the way, what's crazy is Battery Day in 2020 was their shareholder meeting.
Yeah.
Was part of it, which is
Jeez.
like even crazier. Yeah,
That was a crazy
yeah,
event with all the people getting in those cars in the middle of COVID and everything.
yeah.
That was a crazy event.
That was fascinating. Yeah,
Yeah, that really was.
yeah.
Um, Giga Mexico sounds like it's a thing, but kind of strange that we haven't heard Tesla comment on this yet. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the Mexican government probably jumped the gun and wanted to get this out because they maybe it was for political reasons to really make a big hoopla around this and
Mhm.
get people excited about how much growth they're going to bring to the country, all that good stuff, which is great. I'm happy for Mexico. My guess is they're just waiting to announce this at Investor Day. It's probably going to be part of a sort of some slides that say, and here's how we're going to reach our targets for the Master Plan Part 3. Big investments into factories, starting with Giga Mexico, blah blah blah. And they'll sort of, we would like to announce, and you probably heard Giga Mexico is live. They'll announce the Ligma Scythium partnership. There was
We
another
know
one.
Elon likes a mariachi band, so he could have those
Yeah,
up there.
that would be amazing. That would be on brand. Then you also have the one that was just announced a couple days ago around the anode material, the graphite. I forget the name of that deal, but it's like 20% of anode material based on 2020's battery sort of production rate. So that's another thing that was announced, the offtake deal. And then, so those are three things. And maybe one more gigafactory. Maybe we'll get Indonesia as well, because I know there's been a lot of talks around Indonesia. Maybe we'll get Canada. Who knows? But there will be these things where folks will sit down, and I think at the presentation we'll announce hard, like concrete, finalized deals that talk to Tesla's growth into the coming few years and how they're going to scale. How do you think about Giga Mexico?
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of strange to me that they're going to have 3 factories in North America, so close to each other. But it's a good sign, I think, that they think that they can fill out that much capacity. So yeah, I'm just optimistic. I mean, just thinking of the lead times of these. I mean, we were certainly spoiled with Giga Shanghai with how quickly they went from like an empty dirt field, as Lynette Lopez noted so famously, to actually producing and like having a meaningful
She's the
impact
best
on the
journalist ever.
financials. Oh, she is. Yeah, and Business
Yeah,
Insider only does high quality journalistic
amazing.
work.
Yeah,
Just love
goats.
that publication. um, but I think it's going to take 2-3 years, I think, to get to any point of scale from like announcement to actually getting vehicles, a meaningful amount of vehicles getting off the line. So having an announcement right now that could be where the Gen 3 is initially made or something like that. And then I think the other thing is that there's so much room to expand. Austin and Berlin in particular, but also Shanghai, they own a lot of space around there. So I would hope that they continue to kind of ramp up and expand those facilities, even while new ones are built. Because I think to get to 20 million a year, you really need to be in the, what is it, like 1.5 to 2 million units per gigafactory in the long term. So yeah, it's both new factories and expanding the existing ones aside from
Yep.
Fremont. So
Yep. 100%. 100%.
yeah. So we'll go to Q&A in a minute here, but one of the things we usually talk about is some of the other names in our portfolio. Roblox had really strong earnings, really solid bookings last week too. I know that's not a stock you follow too closely, so for those who are interested in comments on that, we'll probably wait until next week when Emmett's back, and we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But I'm curious.
Yeah, you don't want me talking about Roblox.
Anything you've noticed on other earnings calls? I know you've been following GM and Ford, and any other kind of tidbits that you have from listening to those?
Yeah, it's been really fascinating to track those two companies because what was fascinating about Q4 earnings for those two companies is that GM was really trying to hide, I believe, my opinion. This is a statement of opinion. I think they were trying to put lipstick on a pig. They had great earnings, right? They had good earnings, but they're just moving cars from their factories to dealer lots, and they're just
Channel stuffing. Yeah.
channel stuffing. It's obvious. It's super
Yeah.
obvious, and okay, but they get to claim credit for that channel stuffing. So congratulations, Mary. You led. You're just Mary. You're amazing.
It
You're
matters.
the greatest. Yeah, it matters. Yeah. So that was, and they're saying about how they're going to be leaders and all this stuff. So it's just I don't know, just this usual politics speak on these earnings calls, corporate speak that I'm just so tired of. On the flip side, you had Ford with earnings that were not great because they took a huge hit from the Rivian acquisition, and they also were just struggling mightily with the ramp. But they were very transparent about their challenges, and they were super transparent about why it's so difficult and how that they really need to up their game on the EV side, and they really have to get their operational stuff figured out. All right, and so it was quite a contrast. And Ford's going to be the first, for what it seems like, unless one of the other automakers kind of makes a surprise announcement and they break out their EV and gas car businesses in Q1, Ford will be the first legacy automaker that will break out their EV business and their gas car business and list them as two different entities on their earnings reports for all of us to sit down and see what the hell's going on. And that is, I want to commend Jim Farley for doing that, because that's a very brave move. And
it is.
If you're watching this, Jim,
it's
like,
probably not going to
props.
look great at
Not
first,
gonna look great.
but like that's like, he needs that accountability for his own internal team to be like, look, we're losing money. We need to be able to turn the corner on this. So I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I tweeted last night because I was noticing the same thing. Like, Mary is just like patting herself on the back for playing such a great game of checkers. Meanwhile, Jim Farley is just saying, hey, like, Ford is actually not that great at chess. And like, right. I just think, the honesty about their position is so much more, I think, just helpful for an investor, unless you think like EVs aren't going to come and, this whole thing's been overblown. And maybe hydrogen's the future, then sure, go buy like GM and be happy with Mary's plan.
Yeah.
But I think what Jim is doing is the much harder path. I mean, he's like the new Herbert Diess, it seems.
Yes.
And he's going to face a lot of pushback, just like we saw with Herbert. So I really 100%. Wish him and Ford luck, because it's a tough road for sure.
I agree.
But at least they're playing.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the culture of those companies as well. I think this is like really good insight if you, as an outsider, if you want to learn about the culture of a certain company. I think GM's culture is a lot more, well, just make it look good. Just figure out how to
Yeah.
make it look good. And
Yeah.
Ford's culture is, let's just face it. Let's just face it and figure out how to move forward and utilize these earnings reports and our outward facing honesty to light a fire under the team to get better. Okay. And this is from the company that has the best pickup truck sales in globally, which is the largest market in the United States, and they're very open about the challenges they're having. Great. That's what leadership looks like.
Yeah.
And I hope Ford gets rewarded for that by executing at a very high level and people find their products compelling. That in itself is going to be incredibly hard
Yeah.
already. And then you layer on the UAW and you layer on everything else and you got a whole. So I hope Jim does the best. I really wish Jim and the Ford team the best going navigating through this, because it's going to be extremely difficult, and every other legacy automaker would benefit by being as honest as they are.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it made me think of a rumor. So the total rumor, I don't want to, cause anyone to believe that this is a fact, but it is true that GM had a fire in one of their parking facilities. So that was shut down. I think it was somewhere in Detroit area. And they were extremely hush hush about it, apparently. And so a couple of people that I were
GM?
talking, GM, yeah, a couple of the people that I was talking to that actually work there were saying, like, it seems most likely to them that there was one of their EVs, had a fire, and so they were just like incredibly like tight with the details and not let's not let this slip out because that'd be bad for our image. Like you said, instead of just saying, hey, listen, guys, we have like a fire issue on the back of the Bolt, debacle that we had a couple of years ago. This is like a real priority that we need to solve in order to gain the trust of our customers back. So I don't know if it actually was an EV or not, but there definitely was a fire. And, if they were just, essentially covering it up is probably too strong of a word, but, just trying to keep it
Controlling
as
the
quiet as
message.
possible and controlling the message. It's like, yeah, that goes to the type of culture that you were just describing. And it's just sad. And,
Yeah.
as a Michigander here, it's so frustrating too. Cause like I've got so many friends and family that work for both of these companies, and it's just tough to see GM taking such an approach that is rooted in fantasy, I would say.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then real quick, and then you contrast this with Ford's F-150 Lightning halting production because they had a fire,
Yeah.
because the F-150 Lightning battery had a fire, and they were open about, hey, we're halting production. We're gonna have to wait and figure out what's going on. My guess is they'll probably announce a recall. I could be wrong. Hopefully this is just a one-off and they can move forward. But again, another contrast, like one versus
Yeah.
the other. One's taking it honestly, the other one's just putting lipstick on
Yeah.
a pig.
They're being honest about it, and they're taking their medicine now. They're saying, listen, like,
Yeah.
we don't want this to become a bigger problem, so we'll take the financial hit now, even though we're frankly not looking so great in our quarterly financials anyways. But I
Yep.
think that's getting to the root of that, and taking their medicine now is gonna put them in position, in 2024, 2025 to like have figured out these problems and be on much more solid footing to
Yeah.
actually post some profits in that business line going forward. So
Can I make a prediction? This is going to be very
yeah.
bold. Okay. And so didn't Mary Bauer just get inducted to the Automobile Hall of Fame or something? Automobile Hall of Fame, I think she did.
She did, and according to OpenAI, when I was having a conversation with ChatGPT, she's one of the top 10 CEOs in the world.
Okay.
So she
So
led.
here's my prediction. I think Mary Barra retires after the end of this year. Right around this year, she has her accolades. She's being, oh my God, you're amazing. And then what's going to happen starting in 2024? GM's going to collapse because guess what? They're pushing the buck again. Statement of opinion.
Yeah.
I could be completely wrong, but I just don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a moron, but it seems kind of obvious to me.
It seems pretty obvious to me too. I mean, gosh, imagine if Tesla had a whole quarter's sales outstanding right now, just sitting on lots. Like Tesla Q
Yeah.
would be losing their minds, and rightly so. And so it's
Yeah.
just they've got a tough road to hoe. Why don't we move to Q&A?
Yes.
We've got another maybe 15 minutes or so.
Let's do it.
All right, Harry Chu asks, read an article that Biden is
Come on,
running his
Matt.
re-election on
English
the
is not even my first language. Come on.
We can't all be as smart and eloquent as you, Farzad, or Yashu. I don't even know which one it is today. Read an article that Biden is running his re-election on the economy. Either the narrative on the economy shifts or the Dems are done. Which do you think will happen?
Ooh, politics question. I like it.
Yeah, politics.
I do think I generally agree with this statement, but however, the narrative on the economy, if you listen to the Biden administration, it's very good. And if I go outside and I look at how people aren't spending like there's a recession. People are just living their lives. And so if 2024 comes around and the economy is in, I don't even know if I can use metrics and numbers anymore because everything's made up anyway. So like literally,
Yeah.
people can just use whatever number they want. So it's all about psychology. It's all about the psychology of what's going on. If the people psychologically feel like the economy is good and they're spending and they're going on vacation and they're not fearing losing their jobs and they can buy generally what they want and they're happy, then I think the Biden admin has a better chance of being reelected than we give him credit for. However, if there is any sign of a downturn into 2024, which there could be given some of the metrics we talked about with debt being at record highs, record high car payments, potentially the more and more companies lay off workers. If the auto industry starts shrinking dramatically because of the transition to EVs and they're not ready and the supply chains get impacted, all of this could line up to the fact that by end of 2024, the economy could be in the dumpster. And if the economy is in the dumpster, I do not see the Biden administration getting reelected. How do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, if the economy's in the dumpster, I think it doesn't really matter. But the other thing I think about is Trump actually going to succeed in getting the Republican nomination? Because like Trump Biden is probably the election that nobody wants to see
Oh
again,
God,
right? Like
please no.
I think everybody, probably 80% of people would rather see like a new Democratic nominee and a new
Yeah,
Republican nominee. Like
yeah.
let's not rehash the
Just new
2020
people.
election.
I don't even care what their
I
parties are.
know
Just give us some new faces. Yeah,
the
yeah.
gerontocracy is real.
It's crazy.
So, but I think if there's like I've heard rumors of like Nikki Haley running or something like that, and frankly it's much too early to like prognosticate on who will win, and even if someone like Haley was nominated, like who would win the election. But I think at this point in time, I would say that the Republicans' chances are much better at winning the White House if Trump is not nominated. But we'll see.
I
We'll see
agree.
how that shakes out.
You know who does great coverage of this? Yeah, I'm sure you listen to All In podcast, right? All
Yeah,
In.
yeah, yeah.
Those guys cover politics in a very well, like a fair, balanced way. So I would recommend y'all check out All In podcast. I think every Friday or Saturday it comes out every week. Yeah,
Yeah, they do a good job. Some, they have some controversial takes sometimes, but I think that's like
I
helpful.
love it.
It's like,
Yeah,
yeah, like let's stumble through this and make mistakes, and
yeah.
but I think
Test your
it's been
thesis as
it's a
hard as you
great
can.
podcast.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the next question. This one is from Martin Muldoon. How you doing, Martin? On YouTube. Question: Can Tesla get to a $25,000 car by taking a Model 3 and reducing the range to 100 miles? I see you vigorously shaking your head no.
Well, I mean, so they can get to whatever price car they want. It's just a matter of how much money do they want to make or lose. If you think about I know Matt, you have a very detailed breakdown of cost per vehicle per region, but the Model 3 base cost in the United States, it's probably somewhere between $30,000 to $35,000.
Yeah.
So even
Hmm.
if they reduce the range to 100 miles, you still have to carry that battery pack because you're not going to take cells out of the battery pack because you're just breaking your manufacturing process at that point, and it's going to cost
Yeah.
a lot more to do that. So it's like, do you want to lose $5,000 to $10,000 per vehicle? I don't think that's a recipe that is Tesla wants to do.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I think you need more than just like stripping some costs out of the Model 3. You really need a redesign. I mean, look at the Model Y was kind of a redesign on top of the Model 3 platform, and I think what the Gen 3 is going to try to do is to be, all right, let's take all of our learnings from everything that we've done and launch a whole new like combination design and manufacturing process that are both very complementary of each other. And I think that's the way that they can get close to that $25,000 mark. Now, I actually don't even think they will quite hit $25,000. I mean, that was the target, what was it, 5 years ago or something like that, well before this huge spike of inflation. But if they can get to 30 or like even 35, I mean, imagine if they just sell at 35, which is, I think they can do better than that. But if you sell at 35, then with the tax credits, you're at 27,500, at least in the US here. And I don't know how they don't have like a ridiculous volume of units if that's the effective price that consumers are walking home with.
I think they get to 25,000.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
Okay.
because the way I think about it is, and I'm doing a video about this actually. Once I get off, I got to finish up. I want to, but here's a sneak peek, exclusive. No, the average cogs per car right now for Tesla is like 39,000. So if you just take the cars delivered in Q4 and you divide it into the total cost of revenue, it's about $39,000 ish, and that includes S, X, and Y. All right, and the statement from
And
Elon and
three.
the Tesla team is that they want to get the cost. Sorry,
You didn't include the three.
and the three. Sorry, yeah, sorry. You gotta always get it right, Matt. Come on now.
Yeah, I know.
Uh, if you
If you just exclude the Model 3 cost, then it's
well, of course you have to
$20,000.
include it. It'll actually lower it. So it's 39,000. And then Elon and the Tesla team have been very upfront about saying that their target is roughly half the cost of the Model 3 and Y platform. If 39,000 already includes S and X, then the cost to produce that compact car is likely going to be somewhere around $20,000. $25,000 starting price is roughly 20% margin already. So why wouldn't you just sell it at 25?
Yeah. I mean that could be that I could see that panning out. I mean, it would certainly have to be a smaller car.
Of course.
But then the exciting thing though is when you think about like selling FSD on top of that, so you've got $5,000 of margin, but $15,000 potentially of margin, or 20 if they raise the price.
Yeah.
You can have 4x the margin. So even if take rate just goes from, let's say 10 to 20% or something like that, there's a massive increase in the overall gross margin. And if it's, a $25,000 car, and let's just say the price doesn't increase, $40,000 for a car that drives itself like very competently, like that's actually an amazing bargain, especially like after the credit, you could get that car for 32,500.
It's crazy.
That's
It's
bonkers.
absolutely
And
nuts.
Tesla is going to get a credit of $45 per kilowatt hour on top of that. So if
It's
they've
going
got
to be
I don't
yeah.
know, 50 kilowatt hour pack in there, they get an extra $2,000 of margin. So all of a sudden they've got the $5,000 of the core margin plus two from the credit plus up to
Yeah.
15
It's
for
over.
FSD. It's
Yeah, the auto market
how do you compete
yeah.
with that?
You
Like,
can't. You can't. So, dude, like a $25,000 car, if it gets the same lease EV credit that you can get right now in the Model 3, where the manufacturer can choose to pass on the credit through a lower lease, a $25,000 car with that lease credit for the EV lowers it by 7,500 essentially, and then with $0 down, you can lease that compact car for $250 a month. Think about that.
that's ridiculous.
Think about that. Yeah,
That's like
6% interest, 36-month lease, 10,000 miles. Yeah.
that's my AT&T bill each
Yeah.
month. That's
You can
crazy.
drive around a Tesla with autonomous hardware and access to the supercharging network, driving dynamics of an EV, acceleration of a Tesla, battery low in the ground, infotainment, comfort. It's over.
Yep.
Don't buy
crazy.
Tesla stock, not financial advice.
All right. Evan Glansman asks, I believe end of 2024, early 2025 makes sense for Starlink IPO. What are your thoughts? And do you think retail Tesla hodlers, my edit there, will get early access?
It all depends how SpaceX wants to handle this. I mean, they did say, I think when Shotwell a couple years ago said they were gearing to do IPO in 2022 or 23, and it seems like that's sort of been delayed. Some of the verbiage we've been getting from SpaceX was that Starlink is already profitable, it sounds like, and they're already
At least
maybe a little
cash flow neutral, I think is what they said, something like that. Or
it's
maybe it
already
was even
crazy.
positive, but
Yeah. But the
yeah.
fact that they're already with barely anybody using this service, I think speaks volumes to how valuable this thing is. It's all up to Tesla, and I think I don't know if we'll get priority, but I sure hope we do, because if we do, I'm moving a lot towards Starlink. How do you think about this one?
Yeah, I think the time's definitely not right now. I mean, markets are skittish to say the least. I mean, you could have a announcement right now, and it could get priced a certain way, and then if the whole economy or the whole stock market crashes, like we saw with Elon and his Twitter acquisition, like that could really be put Starlink in a disadvantageous position. So I think if you wait another year, 12, 24 months, you can. The market hopefully will be less volatile at that point. So you'll have a better idea of, whether we're in a recession or not, and if things are recovering. at least you'll have more stable pricing. And then at that point, also, like, you'll probably, if we're just at the inflection point right now of being cash flow neutral or slightly cash flow positive, that a year from now, when you're doing these launches with Starship rather than Falcon 9, and you've got so many more customers, I would imagine the nerdy financial people who don't see where this is going would be like, oh my gosh, look, they 4x their cash flow in 12 months or something like that, so the story will be much more advantageous for them to price it then. Elon did make a comment, I forget exactly what he said, about wanting to let retail holders have priority. I don't know logistically how you can actually do that. It seems like the sort of thing that he said he was going to do with the 420 like funding secured tweet, where he's like, oh, like we'll help like the investors to come and join us, like retail investors to go private with us. And then he found out that he actually couldn't do that because of the regulations. So I'm not holding out my hope that there's going to be any sort of preferential treatment, because I just don't know from a regulatory standpoint how they could do that.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll buy open market. At least I will.
Yep. All right. Next question. This one is from Vi. Question: how do you see the NHTSA and Tesla FSD relationship working long term?
Phenomenal question, V. I think the latest recall, quote unquote, gives us a sign that says that NHTSA is actually quite reasonable. They called it a recall, because that's just, they're using verbiage from a million years ago, which is whatever. It is what it is, and we're trying to change that. But the fact
real quick, I don't love on the actual official document, it says the affected components are steering and electronic components. Like,
yeah.
Those actually, there's no problem with those. It's just software.
Yeah, NHTSA's not up to speed. But here's the deal: they didn't say, "Oh my God, it's dangerous, shutting down." They said, "Okay, there is." And if you read why they did the recall, it's because the car was behaving how every driver behaves, which is they never stop at a stop sign. They kind of roll through yellows, and they're kind of like, whatever. Like, literally, it's being trained by humans who don't drive well. So how do you think the car is going to behave? Maybe we should recall all human drivers. Anyway, besides the point. But really, the thing was, okay, you might be quote unquote dangerous. Just update your software by April-ish, and you'll be fine. So there's no urgency to get this thing done, and it's being done through a software update. What that signals to me is that NHTSA, I don't think, really has an issue with how Tesla is handling full self-driving. So any fear mongering from the other side that's saying that this is a dangerous software that Tesla's going to get in trouble for, I think the latest quote unquote recall nullifies that. Because you have all the data set you need to say that, hey, this thing is super dangerous, and it just hasn't happened. So I think this says that the relationship's quite good. And I'm not saying that it's going to allow Tesla to get FSD up and running as quickly as humanly possible, but I think the risk of them getting into serious quote unquote trouble for something they didn't really do potentially is becoming smaller and smaller over time.
Yeah, I would say I'm slightly more concerned that this could be something than you are. I don't know how to ascribe the probabilities to it, but just some of the comments that they've indicated, they're devoting a very tremendous amount of resources to this, and they said something to the effect, I forget who it was, but one of their spokespeople said that they were investigating like novel legal approaches to handle this, and so I don't know what that means, but it doesn't sound like there's nothing going on here to me. So, will they be successful? Do they actually have the authority to shut it down? To me, that's not entirely clear either. But it doesn't seem like they're super optimistic about Tesla's approach here. And I don't think they like some of the stuff that Tesla's doing. And furthermore, with this specific recall, like, I think a lot of it is kind of non-issues, but like I've seen my car kind of run a yellow that was questionable, but it definitely should have stopped and it didn't. I've done that myself driving, so like you make a judgment call and it ends up being the wrong one. Like, but I don't know how you like. I'm not sure that there is a quick fix for Tesla to solve these problems that were addressed. And so if they can't comply, with this, or they try an update and it fixes 90% of the problems, but it's not perfect. Like, what does NHTSA do then? I don't know. And it's I mean, the fact that Missy Cummings is on there and she's incredibly biased against Tesla. I think there's enough points of concern that I'm at least uneasy, and I think this is a at risk for Tesla's kind of autonomy efforts.
Okay.
That at least it could slow them down pretty significantly.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, maybe there is something where that slows them down, but I do think long term, again, if I view it within the lens of will it get done, I don't think there is any. I am I guess more confident that I've been in the past that this will get done, not with like even if NHTSA approaches it how they've always wanted to approach it, because I really do believe, because right now we are in the quote unquote, I think conceptually speaking, the quote unquote most dangerous part of it, if you want to attach, and it's because it's learning, it's still learning. If you want to attach any sort of danger to it, and I'm not calling the software dangerous, what I'm saying is from a standpoint of the percentage of times it could behave in a way that is not human, and that's why the human is in charge of sort of monitoring the system, it could have the most complexities. And to this day, as far as I'm aware, there hasn't been any injuries or deaths reported with full self-driving.
That's the point I was just going to make. Like, that's actually surprising me. Like, I thought there would be
knock on wood,
a pretty significant injury by now, or like some clear case where FSD screwed up and the driver didn't overtake it and somebody was seriously injured or killed. It's like, that is the most amazing statistic out there. Like, why would you shut it down when it's got that track record? I don't know. But the other thing, and we'll move on to the last question after this, but the other thing that just I could see this whole thing panning out where like version 11 ships in the next couple of weeks, rate of iteration from there, because that's like an entire rewrite of the whole like backbone in architecture, is increases pretty dramatically. Let's say like NHTSA comes in the summer and says like, oh, you got issues and we need you to like make these changes. Just doing like some legal challenges for 2 years or something, and then like keep running the software in this legally gray area, and then all of a sudden it's just like unarguable or like undeniably good because they've had 2 more years to iterate on it. And so then it's like, NHTSA, do you really want us to recall this? Like, now, like all the issues that you brought up are like null and void now because we've innovated faster than your regulatory proceedings can keep up with. And so that also gives me some hope that Tesla can just move faster than NHTSA.
Yeah,
even if NHTSA is trying to take an adversarial approach.
I think the data will speak for itself, and I think it's going to be hard to deny.
Yeah. All right. Last question. Let's move on to take one more from Jacob Lavalius on YouTube. Home HVAC 13 months ago on the Q4 call, Tesla said they will make it. When do you guys think?
Man, this is one where I think it's paired, in my opinion. This is going to sound crazy, but I think if Tesla announces an HVAC, they announce a home. I think they announce a home that's fully integrated with an HVAC system, solar, batteries that you can buy, where the house build is optimized to put solar on the roof as efficiently as humanly possible, so it becomes as repeatable as humanly possible. Because the way Tesla has to handle solar, the roof especially right now, and the panels, is that they have to abide to the how each roof is sort of different from house to house. They don't have a standardization of a roof. Whereas if they come out with their own house, they're able to do that. And the raw materials for a house, if you really think about it from a cost perspective, it's just a frame and some solar panels, and I'd say just right, but it's within the wheelhouse of how Tesla would approach manufacturing. And this is sort of way out there, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I really do believe that HVAC, if Tesla comes out with one, I think it'll probably be paired with their own home solution. But this could be crazy thinking. So this is my crazy thought for the day. I think that's when it comes out. It could be years. I don't know. How do you think about this?
Yeah. So Martin in the comments says if they're still struggling with solar roof, HVAC would be equally difficult, and I think that's a fair point. I mean, just manufacturing the tiles is one thing. Getting them into like a home is a whole other issue. And I think a lot of the problems that we're seeing with solar roof are like you say, the fact that every house is different, and so like the state of the subroof is different, and like there's like different venting, and so you've got to like have like the trouble is not in like getting all the pieces in a row or like where it's flat. The trouble is all in like the the angles and the parts that need to be kind of like customized and fitted. Yeah, so that's the real inefficiency, and to me, like building homes is like you're like multiplying that complexity. To me, I could actually see them doing that maybe in 2030 or something like that, because who's going to build a home like more reliably and like exactly to the specs than Optimus? And like that, I could actually see lowering the cost of home ownership by just like being very methodical about like having these Optimus workers, like they don't miss a single nail in the whole house, and everything is like exactly to spec, and you can do things more efficiently that way. I kind of think Solar Roof really should be focused more on new builds, like just partner with like new build contractors, and then like just come in when there's no roof yet and put the whole thing on at once. To me, that's the better way to do it than the retrofit, at least for right now with where they're struggling. But I think home HVAC is actually more complicated than people think too. There's a guy who I've been following for a while who does a lot of like heat pumps for like home heating. It's called Nate the House Whisperer on Twitter.
That's awesome. That's a
this guy. He's phenomenal. Like, and so he's trying to like convince the world to go on heat pumps. But the issue that he's finding is like all these contractors are like, it's just so much more work to like figure out how to do that. And there are like complications with the way that the vents go in each home, where if you just, buy a big furnace, you don't have to worry about it. But with a heat pump, like the whole efficiency of the way like the vents are like designed and like the losses at each thing are much more complicated to figure out. And most people just don't want to deal with like the brain damage of educating themselves on that. And what if it doesn't work? And so like this guy is like, I've been following him for 2 years, and he's just been like beating his head against the wall of like this, like the ground source heat pump is like a way better tool, but nobody wants it because it's just like it's more headaches to figure out. And so like the homeowners don't want to like take a risk, and then the contractors, there's all sorts of reasons why they don't go for it. And so very long-winded answer, but I think home HVAC the Tesla will do it eventually, but I think it faces a lot of these like issues that you and I wouldn't normally think about, at least in retrofits. So I think new builds, like if Tesla was to have some like huge agreement with Pulte Homes or something like that and say, hey, we'll do HVAC and roof and power wall and charging, but we're going to integrate it all together, and we're going to come in and like work directly with you so that it's designed from the outset to work right. And then we'll just come in, on these particular weeks within your overall project, and we'll do the 100 houses that are in your development all like kind of in a row. I could see them doing something like that. But I think trying to do a lot of these on a one-off basis, or like get a series of contractors out there, like I think it's just gonna be low margin and like a headache and not efficient.
Yeah, so. I agree 100%. Yeah, I think if they're able to do it from the ground up, either through partnership or with their own process, I think it's the optimal way of doing it. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Well, thanks for stepping in. I really appreciate it, Farzad. Great talking to you as always. And
likewise, man.
Appreciate you've been stepping in here. And can't wait to see that new video that you gave us a sneak peek for.
Thanks, man. Yeah, very happy again to be invited back, even though you didn't want me at first, but you brought me back anyway. So thank you. Actually, I'm here because poor Yashu is sick, and so hopefully, Yashu, you feel better, and I made you proud as another brown person. Hopefully, we can be proud of each other here. But anyway, thank you so much for having me, Matt. Thank you, everybody from the Good Soil community. Hopefully, this was informative and helpful for y'all. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.